So I know I'm wearing the same shirt as the welcome video, and I will probably be making 2 more videos also in the same shirt. It says my book club reads wine labels. It's it's very fun. My roommate got it for me for my birthday this year, but this video I want to talk about the books I've read so far during quarantine and what I'm continuing to do after that. This is almost like a mid-year book TBR sort of deal because it's already May, but I also kind of wanted to discuss like my reading plans for the year as well in total for 2020 because a couple of them started in January but are still working through. So without further ado, let's talk about what books I'm reading, what I'm going to read, books I've read during quarantine. I'm going to try and just list through these pretty quickly because I don't do book reviews, so I don't want to start with that on my first video. So without further ado, let's go. So I kind of started self-isolating and quarantining a little bit before everybody else did, just because I'm like, this is going to be a deal. It's going to be bad. So I'm going to just kind of list through the books that I've read since that all started, which was for me like early March. I'm in the United States, so other places had quarantining and isolating before March, but that's about when the United States was like, woohoo, light bulb, we're finally aware of what's going on. Woohoo. So I listened to the audiobook Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, and it was a really good book. I liked it a lot. The audiobook was also like very well done, so that was nice. I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. I started technically before quarantine, but I finished shortly after it all started. The Eye of the World, The Wheel of Time, book number 1 by Robert Jordan. It was a little slow to start, but I really liked it overall. Give it 5 stars. I know in big fantasy novels and high fantasy and stuff especially, they have to do a lot of world building at the beginning, so it being a little slow is not a problem. It doesn't bother me. I read the 5th book in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. It's technically like the 2nd one by the other author. The first 3 are a trilogy, then the original author died, and then David Lagerkrantz finished the other 2. I'm a bigger fan of the original 3 than this follow-up 2, but I still like the universe and the characters, so that's why I kept reading it. Gave that book a 4 stars, and it was pretty good overall. I read a couple of cybersecurity books and technology books during this time. I do work in IT, so that's interesting for me. I read Red Team Development and Operations, A Practical Guide. That was good, very informative. I read Big Little Lies because I wanted to watch the TV show, and I'm of the belief that, for myself personally, I can separate them as 2 different entities, books and the movies and TV show adaptations, but if I ever want to read the book, I have to do it before, just how my brain works. So I read Big Little Lies. Actually fairly impressed. It was a little, like, silly. I'm not really into contemporary style books, but it was, the mystery and intrigue were, like, really satisfying, and I was very happy with that. I read Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I did most of my early 2020 Sanderson stuff via Audible, and I'll go into all of that in a minute because that's its own sort of deal, but Warbreaker was really good. I liked it a lot. More technology books. I read Women in Tech, Practical Advice and Inspiring Stories from Successful Women in Technology to Take Your Career to the Next Level. That's by Tara Wheeler. Awesome story. I felt very seen by it, and it was just great advice for a woman starting her career in technology. Read Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. It was very good. I like modern or additional retellings of Greek mythology and just mythology in general. Read The Alice Network. I liked one of the characters' stories a lot, and then the other character was just very much a letdown, so I gave it a 3 stars overall, because I liked about half of the book, so that's what I gave it points for. I read the Wax and Wane or Mistborn Era 2 books by Brandon Sanderson, Alloy of Law, Shadows of Self, and Bands of Mourning. Fantastic. I love those. Again, I'll get into Brandon Sanderson in a minute. I read Sandworm, which is also a technology book, A New Era of Cyber War and the Hunt for the Kremlin's Most Dangerous Hackers. I thought it was really awesome, and it read like a suspense novel, even though it was totally a nonfiction book. which is, I guess, terrifying, but it works. I read Stardust by Neil Gaiman. That was a really cutesy book. I liked it a lot. I've been reading a lot of like bigger, more serious books, and then that one was just like, oh, it's happy and it's cute, and Neil Gaiman does a great job of just like creating his all of his very unique worlds and all of his different books and all the characters, and I've always loved his stuff. I read a John Steinbeck book, which is my favorite author. I have a section. I actually have it right here. We'll pull it up. I read Cup of Gold by John Steinbeck. It is about Captain Morgan and all of his nonsense and his mighty conquest on the Spanish Main and how they go and conquer Panama. It's a whole deal. It's obviously like a fictional story about the actual pirate, the Buccaneer as he called himself, but I really liked it. I love John Steinbeck, so it was good, and I've always loved pirates too, so it was just fun in all the ways. And then I just yesterday, actually last night, very late, finished The Stand by Stephen King. That one is really the hashtag quarantine book tag fun, because it's about a pandemic, and then because it's, oh yeah, it's right here. I'm not gonna pull it out, it's a very large book, but it was really good. I've always wanted to read The Stand. It's just been a while coming, and I got it for my birthday this year, and I kind of forgot in the 3 years between when I wanted like to read it and now that it was about a pandemic, and I started reading it like right at the beginning of COVID, and I was like, oh, okay, this is good. So it took me a little while to get through just because it was kind of making me like anxious and like scared with everything that was going on with the state of the world. So I did like it a lot towards the end. I read like 600 pages yesterday of this 1150 page book. So it ended up being really good. It just took a little while to get started because I was not wanting to read it because it was a lot. It was a harsher pandemic than what we've seen, but like it was still too close to what was going on for me to be okay with it. So that is all of the books that I have started and finished, or just finished since like early March. And I'll talk more about like 2020 reading goals and what I have planned to read after this. I'm gonna go get my cup of coffee though, it's ready. So, 1 second. Got my coffee, it's very exciting. This is one of my favorite mugs. I got it at the Library of Congress, and it says, "I cannot live without books," Thomas Jefferson. Anyways, so the main reading plan I had for the entire year, I think I officially like decided on this early February, which is when I started reading Mistborn Era 1, was that I wanted to read all of the Brandon Sanderson books in the Cosmere, which is the universe that the Stormlight Archive is set in, which is the only books I'd read prior to this, by Brandon Sanderson. I wanted to read all of the books in the same universe, because I was kind of gathering that stuff was connected, and I was like, I want to really be able to, like, understand what everyone on the internet's talking about when Rhythm of War comes out in September. So I just started listening to, or reading my books via Audible, for Mistborn Era 1, Warbreaker, Mistborn Era 2, and that's about where I've gotten so far. Because I'm not going to let myself start rereading the Stormlight Archive until, I think, mid-July. I read really fast, and I tore through those books the first time. I think I'm going to try and read them a little bit more slowly, because I was very confused, or, like, I missed some things in the third book, which I believe is Oathbringer. Yes, it's that away on my shelf over there. So I do want to read them more slowly. I'm not sure if I'm going to, like, go to the depth of annotating them, but I started reading all these books this year, and I'm wanting to reread the Stormlight Archive before 4 comes out, Rhythm of War, and because of that is kind of why I'm back on YouTube, and why I'm wanting to talk about my books and everything again, because I happened to find the Cosmere Along, which is hosted by quite a few people. Or there's one main host, and I don't remember her name exactly. I think it's Rachel. But I follow the Little Book Owl, and that's how I found out about it. Kaz, you're great. And I was like, wow, there's a whole community of people doing the same thing that I'm doing. I want to be a part of this. So I'm now like in the Discord and all of that for the Cosmere along. It's very exciting. I have ordered, and they are coming, the physical books for Elantris and Arcanum Unbounded, and I believe it's called it's the Mistborn related novella. I think it's the Lost Metal or something like that. However, I wanted the pretty UK covers, and I don't live there, so the shipping is going to take a minute. But they're supposed to arrive in like the next 2 weeks, so those books will be on my June TBR officially, which I'll probably make its own video about. But yeah, finding that everybody else was also reading all the Cosmere books again, and that made me really excited, and I kind of want to just be able to talk about it on YouTube with all of y'all, so that's very exciting for me. Yeah, I loved the Stormlight Archive. That's how I started Brandon Sanderson. Secret, a boy told me to read them, who I liked at the time, which is why I read them. But no regrets here. I loved the books. They are like some of the best high fantasy novels I have ever read. Just the way Brandon Sanderson like builds his universe and his magic systems is just totally like mind blowing to me, and I love it. So I'll obviously, for the following Mistborn books I read, I'll probably put out something a little bit more intensive to, like, just to provide content to them, or reviews or, like, something like that for them, but, I read the Mistborn Era 1, like, kind of all 3 of them in February, so I don't necessarily, like, feel comfortable like talking too much about them, because I also did listen to them on audiobook, and I love Audible, I love audiobooks, but for me it's not, like, I didn't realize that the word feruchemy was spelled with an F, because the guy who narrates it, David Kramer, who is awesome, says feruchemy, like that's what I heard, like a TH sound, so I went to pick up the Mistborn Era 2 books to read, and I saw that word wasn't like how I heard it. So I was like, well, I can't read the books now. I'll probably go back and read the actual books at some point, but not right this second. I'm excited for Elantris, though, and the novella and the collection of short stories that are coming in from that. Hopefully those will stretch me out until mid-July, because I like actually hit a reading slump when I'm like, it's too early for me to start reading the Stormlight Archive again, which was a bummer. But that's all I really wanted to say about Brandon Sanderson and those books in particular that I was planning for the year. I will kind of, though, go through a little bit. This is probably like a long video at this point. Oh well. I'll now hit just like a general TBR from where I'm at right now, and what I'm wanting to read in the near future before July. Mid-July. Alright, so TBR for the future. Is obviously I'm going to finish The Great Hunt, which is the Wheel of Time #2, and whenever I finish that, I will probably hop into the third one as well. Hopefully I finish that, honestly, this weekend. We'll see what happens. My mom really wants me to read this book called Station 11. It's also about a pandemic, and y'all just heard what I thought about Stephen King and The Stand right now, so this one is apparently not as horror-focused, so maybe that's a little bit better, but I'm excited to read it regardless. It sounds cool. I've always liked post-apocalyptic books, and dystopian novels, I think, is like the actual genre title, so I know we're kind of living in something that is a little like uncomfy right now, but also, sorry, it just started like massively raining outside. Hopefully y'all don't hear that, but I've always liked the dystopian novels, so and I honestly haven't found a whole lot in the adult section of the bookstore, just like out of the young adult section, the YA, the teen, and so I'm excited to see how this book goes, and maybe it'll point me in the direction of some other books I want to read in the future. I also, for my birthday, got The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. I love his books. They are so strange. I don't actually know a lot about this one, and I can't read the back because there's an unfortunate sticker on it. Multiple stickers. I think we got this from somewhere used, but it's all good. I love Haruki Murakami. My favorite book of his that I've read is Killing Commendatore. I can never pronounce that out loud correctly, but that's just, it was such an amazing, like, experience. I kind of think of his novels as they're contemporary with, like, aggressive magical surrealism, but like, and then they're also in Japan, which I haven't been to, but I'd like to go. So I'm excited to read this. I do find all of his books like ridiculous and like super weird, but in such a good way that I'm okay with it. And they're just the most unique books I've ever read. And I need to mix it up. I've been reading a lot of fantasy, which is good. I don't mind it, but mixing it up a little bit is always good for me not hitting reading slumps. I've mentioned I like John Steinbeck. I was wanting to, and I think I own most of the books he's written. I have not read 2 of them that I own, and one is The Red Pony, so I would like, and it's really tiny. I should be able to get through it, and the font is big, so it's just, I think it's honestly more of a novella than an actual novel. It's 120 pages, so I'll probably try and read this pretty soon as well. And also, speaking of John Steinbeck, I get a little kick to I get the kick and the need to reread East of Eden every now and again, and I'm feeling it, because, again, I've been reading a lot of fantasy, and I don't own a lot of classic books that I haven't read right now, and I do love reading things that are on the classic scale most of the time. But I love this book. It's not a happy book, so don't expect it to be, but all I will say about this is it's a modern retelling of a couple of families, one who is modeled after John Steinbeck's own family, in Salinas Valley, California, and it is a modern retelling. I know I said that, I didn't finish that thought though. It's a modern retelling of the fall from grace, the getting booted from the Garden of Eden, and what happens to that, and it follows a couple of families, and it's just beautifully written, and I love it, and I really want everybody to read it. It's slow, it's sad, it's not a happy book, but if you're willing and able to appreciate the way it's written, you will probably like it a lot too. And I also did mention Elantris a few minutes ago, which I'll be reading whenever it gets here. I'll put out an actual TBR video for June. I just kind of wanted to shove everything into one video so I could post something in my YouTube for the first time in 3 years. So, that's all I have for y'all. If y'all want to see anything in particular, or have any ideas of what I can post to make this more interesting, I just comment down below and follow me and let me know what y'all think. I'm also toying with the idea of doing some of those live readathon things, Little Book Owls, that I don't want to steal that from her necessarily, but I love it, and it really helped me to actually make it all the way through the stand yesterday, so I might do something like that. We'll see what happens, but I'm excited to be back, and I will also probably be posting a bookshelf reorganization video soon, because I really need to do it. I'm out of bookshelf space. I have ordered something from IKEA, so when that gets here, I will have a little bit more shelf space to work with, so I will probably put something together for everyone on that issue. And I will also be putting up some yoga related videos maybe soon, and whenever COVID lets me travel again, I'll post some travel videos. Thanks y'all, have a great day.